In this module, we're going to look at a number of the almost mechanical issues to do with valuations. And that's, first of all, the question of the instructions to initiate the valuation, and then the whole process of the property inspection. We're also going to talk about risk. To do that, I'm just going to take you through a short PowerPoint, and this will just summarize what's in the study guides. However, it's really important in this module to go through the study guide carefully because there's a lot of practical information in it. The valuation instruction actually initiates the whole process of the valuation. It establishes the relationship between the valuer and the client. And it's important that it's clear to be able to outline what the expectations are, what the interest is to be valued, what the property is, and a number of other critical issues that really define the parameters of the valuation. For this reason, it's important that you look at the question of instruction carefully. Often, if a client simply phones up and says they want a valuation, it's important to carefully take them through what the options are, what their purpose is, and so on, and then reflect back to them in written form a statement of what you understand the instructions to be. And that way you make sure that you're covering these issues without necessarily waiting for the client to give you exactly all of the bullet points that are listed on this slide. Once the instruction is taken, then we move, as we saw in the last module, to gathering data, deciding on the approach, and so on, and then moving into the inspection. The inspection certainly gives the valuer the on-site appreciation of exactly what is in the property. We did mention in the last modules briefly that the whole question of whether an inspection is absolutely necessary is a little bit debatable. Certainly the quality of your valuation improves as a result of inspection, but now we're seeing some valuations being done without it, and that's debated in the study guide. When you go to the inspection, you really want to take down as much information about the property as possible. Basically, it consists of going into every room in the property, measuring up so you develop your own floor plan, and from that you compute the floor area rounded to about the nearest square metre. Beware, you're not land surveyors, and so errors and so on can add up when you're only doing this quickly, and so don't get carried away with what's sometimes called millimetre madness, where you try and measure everything to extraordinary precision and write down as many significant figures come out of your calculator, and it all gets a little bit silly. So just keep the numbers rounded to reasonable amounts. As part of the inspection, it's important to note the construction methods and finishes. Also note the architectural style, and in the study guide we go through a number of illustrations of the typical architectural styles that are found in residential buildings, especially in Queensland. It's a good idea to keep an eye out to learn more about the different architectural styles, and as you get more experience, that just puts a little bit of a finish to the quality of your valuations. As part of that, it's important to also estimate the building age. The architectural style certainly gives you a head start in many cases, but there are a number of other tricks and hints that are in the study guide. Now, the real observation, the real point of difference that's going to come from the inspection is not so much from the global understanding of the property, which you get from most of the above, but it's actually to observe the unexpected, and this is to observe defects and remediation. And so it's important to develop a bit of an eye and also a cost understanding when it comes to maintenance and defect issues. To look at defects, you can break them up into different types. There's structural defects, which are things which really affect the very fabric of the building, like cracked bricks and so on. There's maintenance items, such as painting, maybe leaking guttering, and renovation items for things like kitchens and bathrooms that are normally considered to deserve a refit, probably about once every 10, 20 years or so. It's also useful for the valuer to have a feel for the overall impact of things like this on the value. While paintwork might make the property look rather shabby, ultimately it's a relatively minor cost compared to maybe structural cracking or something, which might cost tens of thousands of dollars to repair, even though it only appears to be a small amount of cracking or something. Likewise, having an understanding of the costs of putting in a new kitchen and so on is very, very useful. In addition to the topic of inspection and going over tips and tricks for inspection, in this module also looking at risk and risk assessment. The assessment of risk is something which is becoming more important in property valuation. And so it's important to look at what risks might be sitting in front of you. Now, risks can really be separated into two groups. One is what risks are there that the value may not be what it appears as a result of something that the valuer is not aware of. And this can be economic, such as what's likely to be happening in the future in the region or in the town where the property is. It also can be due to assumptions that the valuer is forced to make because the valuer is not a specialist in all areas. Things like specialist building issues, such as structural problems in inconspicuous places that a building inspection might be able to pick up. It's nice if the valuer is able to get a building inspection done, but usually they don't have that luxury. A prudent purchaser, of course, would have a building survey done or a building check of some sort, and so this is likely to be carried. But certainly if there's $20,000 worth of work to be done inside the ceiling where the valuer can't see, that's going to affect the value, but the valuer can't be held responsible for it. Likewise, things like termites, land contamination, and others. And you'll notice that in the example reports, there are often clauses written into the valuation reports to cover the fact that the valuer has made certain assumptions. Give some thought to those and consider how you're going to respond to them when you're doing your own valuations. Overall, it's useful to look to the API guidelines for how to do risk assessments and make a risk statement. And these are becoming firmed up, in recent times, and it's worth being aware of what the expectations are. As well as the risks to the purchaser, there's also risks to the valuer, because if the valuer misses something that they really should have commented on or taken into account, then the valuer can be liable. And this area of risk management is becoming an important issue in professional practice.